Welcome, my friends. The last two teaching videos that I have shared with you have had the focus of the conscious dying process. And as I've shared there, it's actually a being reborn, a kind of resurrection, moment by moment, into the body of joy, into the body of love that is your deepest and truest nature. Today, I want to focus on that process of relaxing, releasing, and in that sense, dying into, and specifically in your practice, deeper levels of what contemplation, meditation, mindfulness can invite you into. In order to do that, or maybe backing up, what is so essential to understand is that the ego, your sense of yourself as an I or a me, that is a constant manifestation, a constant structure that resists you in the world right now, most of the time. Or a process that resists. It's a resistance to relationship with a capital R. That is, it's an existence to what is below, prior to, and gives birth to, makes alive in you, layer upon layer upon layer of conscious experience. And this begins very early. It begins, let's not talk about the Buddhist philosophy of every human being has had many births before. Let's not go back that far. Let's just start in the womb. I've written about in the Mandala of Being, and it might be good to refresh yourself, or if you haven't read that book, read it. Think about it. I've written about, in one specific chapter, the four holding environments. Very briefly now, the four holding environments are the womb, first holding environment. You're held by your mother's womb and you gestate in there from a sperm and an egg into the body, ready to be born, into an environment no longer being sustained by the uterus. You're floating in a sac of amniotic fluid. Now in the second holding environment, you're being held by the consciousness of your mother and father, other adults, in a world you cannot survive in without them or some surrogate for them. And therefore you're being held by their psychology, their language, the depth to which they have surrendered, consciously died into a deeper ground in themselves, or not, which is mostly the case, the not. You're gestating in their existence as individuals that is ever resisting deeper layers of themselves, deeper levels of themselves, deeper potentials of themselves, as their parents resisted, as their parents resisted, as social groups resist, as nuclear families resist, as races resist, as genders resist, as long as those things are operational identities. In that second holding environment, you're in that. You're incubating in that. And they're going to teach you language. They must. That means they're going to make you understand something of the subject-object, me, you world that we all function in. And you're going to begin to understand time and your very deepest dependence on dependency on them will gradually diminish, but in some ways you'll remain dependent on them until some other structure is taking over, like an educational system, going to school. But as I've said many times, by the time you're 8 or 9 years old, your self system, your me, your sense of me, of I, me, a separate self, the fundamental mistake, believing that you are a separate self, that's now firmly in place. And you have now become an endless and perpetual form of resistance. And the resistance is suffering. The resistance is trying. It's avoiding. It's wanting. It's not wanting. It's learning more and more and more. For some people, the resistance becomes the very structure of how their minds operate. For other people, the resistance is the structure of their emotional identity and how they believe in their emotions, but don't truly understand how to engage consciously with deeper feeling. So the second holding environment gives way to a third holding environment in which all of us have this sense of me or I functioning in the world as a separate self, iterating itself moment by moment by patterns of self-affirmation that are actually resistance to a deeper ground of yourself. Patterns reinforced in synagogues, in temples, and in mosques, reinforced in political gatherings and in political argument, reinforced by mental training as doctors and lawyers and philosophers, reinforced in almost every way. And all of this, the first two and the third holding environment, exist in a fourth holding environment, this present moment. Now, and within us, from conception, prior to conception, there is something, an intrinsic, essential luminosity, a spark of God, the Christ within, the pearl of great price, great worth inside of you. And that is not only moving with you in each stage of development, each holding environment, it is part of the impulse into the next stage. It's part of the ground of a conscious potential to stop resisting, to start to land in the ever-present fourth holding environment, the now, the ground, the source, the God, the suchness. So many words. Understand yourself. Your body tells you the moment you're resisting, it gets anxious, tight. There's just the slightest ripple. Just the slightest ripple. And Kathy and I were facing the move here, which took a lot of logistic and organization and hard work and energy. And a big move for her, away from her family and her newly born granddaughter, which when we first made the decision was on its way. But one day I just said to her, what I know is that wherever we are, whatever we're doing, we'll keep saying yes. We'll keep finding the ground of relaxation, of no longer resisting, of flowing with the demands of necessity, organization, flow of time, money, everything. And so maybe I shouldn't have spoken for the two of us, but we were really close. And she said, just like this, she said, that's the prayer. And in a split second, this is an example of what I mean by the body talking to you. In a split second, for a moment, I just went, because I wanted her somehow to not think of it as a prayer, but the actuality of who she is, who I am. In other words, I wanted her to know something, understand something in the way that even if it was true, even if it was true conceptually, even if it was true of who she is in her deepest process and myself, it still, in that moment, was also about, and then I feel a little better. I feel a little safer about us, therefore about me. And when she said it's a prayer, it took me a fraction of a second of, before I went, yes, it is also a prayer. As all my teaching to you, these words to you, my retreats, Kathy and my retreats together, our work here at Moon Lake is a prayer. My books are a prayer. And they also are the way of life, the path. Okay, so that rather long anecdote is how subtle the resistance is, how quickly your body tells you no. And if you're angry, resentful, bitter, afraid, your body's screaming no. If there's anxiety, resentment, judgment, your body is screaming no. And yet, for the part of you resists, that's who I am. That's the truth. That's the way it is. They have to change. We need more voting rights. We need more freedoms. No more guns, more guns. All resistance, no remedy at that level, no resolution now or 1,000 years from now at that level, as it never was. So you have to just see it and go, oh my God, me, ego in every person, it's just endless resistance. It's a mechanism that resists. And decide if you want to resist anymore. Do you really want to resist love? Do you really want to resist the body of joy? Do you really want to resist dying? They're going to die anyway. So you die sooner because somebody hates you and is poisoned in themselves and their form of resistance? You can't solve that at that level ever. So sometimes in meditation, you can see this and you can relax. And what you're relaxing through is the essence of that second and third holding environment, which is intense contrast. There's something inside of you and people that wants contrast. And the more intense the contrast, no matter how miserable it is, no matter how it ages you, no matter how it makes your heart palpate, no matter how it exhausts you, your nervous system, how it leads to nervous breakdown, how it leads to addiction. Addiction are extremes of contrast. Oh. Oh. Mm. Ah. Endlessly. So whenever there is any form of contrast, woo, any form of contrast in you, just go, wow. I'm literally incarnating now in the resistance that is extreme contrast. Now you think you woke up because suddenly you've had a meditation practice. You can drop in and you're at peace. That's another form of resistance. Now you're in the first holding environment where there is no contrast. Your mom's heartbeat continues all the time. Her breathing continues all the time. The patter of her voice on and off, on and off, on and off. The temperature all the time. The containment and confinement all the time. No contrast. Nirvana. Not quite, but peace, peace, stillness. Oh, deep meditation. Okay, yes, it's deeper and it's restorative. But that kind of peace does not set you free. You just might get addicted to it, spend more time in meditation. What happens? See, it too is a form of resistance. Now you start to get closer to what you're really resisting. And you'll feel it. You'll find out what it is. And what it is the divine, almost always in some form that either seduces you with wonderment or just terrifies you with its ugliness. It's fear. It's fear as a god, as an unrelenting structure. It's sorrow or loneliness or of the same kind. And these things will never go away, not ever. You'll never defeat them. You have to relax. The you that reacts, that resists anything, everything, at any level. Okay. Next time you're in deep stillness and meditation, just recognize this too as a form of resistance and relax. You have no idea what will come. You don't want to relax something that sweet. I mean, after all, how long did you work and practice to be able to drop into that so quickly? Next time you're in any form of contrast in a relationship, realize, oh, now I'm in the level of incarnation that's based in extreme contrast. The next time you're in really thinking you can understand the world mentally and explain people and write an essay about this and understand why this one's this way and the social history, the history of society and culture, realize that whole mental structure that thinks it can figure it out somewhat, also a form of resistance. It's not invalid. It's useful. It can be fun. If it's fun for you, it's really fun. And it can keep other people in that same kind of embodiment, encasement, and resistance within themselves. The scientist breaks through at certain moments, but the one that needs to figure it all out and explain it, make it into an equation, turn the equation into math, turn the math into engineering, turn them into technology, another form of resistance. Technology will never, ever save us. So-called STEM education will take us deeper into misery. Because the resistance isn't really being seen. The ego, self, that me, that you, a structure of resistance. When you can know that about yourself, when you relax and enjoy that, when you just, yeah, you don't have to fight any battle anymore. You don't have to resist anything. Even that might be a form of resistance. The peacemaker in you, but I'm talking about the peacemaker in you. I'm not even talking about peace. Joy. Stillness. Deliciousness. Intimacy. And now just changing direction. Blessings. As I've been saying in these recent videos, certain aspects of my work for me have evaporated. But the work we do here at this property, with individuals, with couples, in small groups that my wife and I do together, sometimes individually with people, that is a chance for you to sit in what I'm talking about. Get some simple taste of it. See where you can work on your resistance to reality. Because that's what your heart is calling you to. So we're here. There'll be a retreat in September here. Small group of people. Interesting, however the chemistry of that group unfolds. Join us.